welcome you all to Trek Wars.
So today on Trek Wars, we're going to be learning about the Dominion Cruiser. So the Dominion Cruiser has a full defense of 2,665,000. It's considered a heavy cruiser. It can accommodate 2,500 plus flight crew and troops. It has a power plant, one and more possible 2 MA warp systems, 2 or more impulse systems. Its dimensional length is 639 meters. Its mass is 4,215 metric tons. It has a warp speed of 9.6. Its armament consists of 6 or more phase polaron beam weapons, possibly other weapons, as well as 1 torpedo. Alright, let's take a look at its weapons. It has 6 polaron beam weapons that can hit for 337,500 terawatts of damage. It has 1 torpedo launcher located in the front of the ship, and that torpedo is capable of launching 337,500 points of damage per torpedo. Now, I will note that its torpedo is incredibly powerful and is around the same power output as seen on quantum torpedoes, but it does seem to have a very slow fire rate for a ship of its size, and for that reason I don't know if it's capable of launching standard torpedoes. Maybe a barrage does the same as the Galaxy class can do, or if it's only equipped with these single shot, extremely powerful, basically Dominion version quantum torpedoes. Now let's take a look at the ship's stats. The ship has an overall attack value of 2,635,000. It has shields of 1,625,000. It has a hull value of 1,040,000 with a full defense of 2,665,000 with an armor rating of 4.06. So taking a look at this information, we can see that its shields are slightly weaker than seen on the Galaxy class, and its hull value is about equal to that of the Galaxy class. And then when it comes to its armor rating is similar to that of the Galaxy class. So overall, this ship's size, this ship's hull, this ship's stats are all significantly equal to, or if not slightly better than, a standard Federation Galaxy class starship. Alright, so now let's talk about how we figured out these weapons were so powerful. At 337,000, that's a pretty powerful weapon. And then why are the torpedoes and the polaron beam weapons the same? Well, in a vital sequence, we do see that a standard Miranda class, which has a full defensive value of 675,000, is actually destroyed by 1 beam and then 1 torpedo from this ship. So we know that the value of the Miranda is, and we can divide it by 2, and then we have an estimation of the power level seen by the Jem'hadar cruiser when it attacks and destroys one of these Miranda class starships. Now, the Miranda class starship is basically completely obliterated. Its shields are knocked out within the 1 shot, and then the torpedo hits and it completely annihilates the bridge and most of the ship. So we can see that this weapon is incredibly powerful. And so now we have to try to speculate, why do the Dominion have a ship like this? Because when you look at the Dominion fire rates, they seem to be extremely slow, and I don't really understand why. Alright, so since I don't honestly know why this fire rates are so low, but we can actually try to figure out a reasonable reason or an explanation that makes sense in universe. And so when I do that, one of the things that I come up with is, one of the things about different kinds of ships is there are different kinds of shields. So there are shields like you see before us, like if you look at the Nebula. So the Nebula class starship, the blue is a representation of a bubble shield. So your TNG or your Golden Era starships use bubble shields. And so there are advantages and disadvantages to a bubble shield, and we need to understand them before I can make my argument for why the Dominion ships are doing this. a bubble shield, if you shoot this vessel, it's not going to do hardly any damage at all to the ship. A weapon like this, it's going to hit the bubble, it's going to spread out, it's not going to do much of anything. Now, other ships like the Akira, the Saber, the Norway, the Steam Runner, and the Excelsior have a different kind of shield. And we'll use the Excelsior because the old Constitution, Constellation, Mirandas, and Excelsiors use a shield where the shield just wraps around the outer shell of the ship. Now, there's benefits to this and there's disadvantages. There is more potential for bleed through, but the shield itself will last longer than a bubble shield. So if you're a ship like the Akira or the Steam Runner and you have armor underneath it, ablative armor especially, then you would want to have a shield that wraps around, because the penetration will actually be offsetted by the armor. And the bubble shield, usually ships that are using bubble shields don't have particularly high levels of armor. So Excelsiors, Nebulas, and the TNG era starships, they're not really focused on armor. It's not really a big thing. And they're counting on their shields, and the shields are enormously strong on those ships. And so if you're being attacked and you have a bubble shield, right, you can be hit with like powerful weapons and it's going to do not much of anything. So a Dominion cruiser is going to not perform very efficiently against any kind of ship that uses a bubble shield, as long as the bubble shield is strong. So I mean, obviously nebulas and galaxies have enormously powerful shields. Now, on the other hand, if you're attacking a ship that is dependent on, the, let's say, wraparound armor, or the, not wraparound, but the wraparound shield and the ablative armor, then this is going to be a far more effective weapon, because you're going to get far more bleed through, and then there's a high percentile that you could cause physical damage to the ship, like, damaging a warp nacelle, damaging a torpedo module, or something along those lines. So I think that the Jem'hadar fighters are designed to basically attack things like nebulas and bubble shields and overwhelm them with enormous amounts of firepower. Right. And I think that the cruiser is designed for taking on ships that have high armor and then have a defensive, I call it a wraparound shield. And the reason why they hit so heavily and so hard is that means that those shields are not going to be able to protect all of the damage and output done by such a high frequency and high powerful weapon. You will get a lot of bleed through. So I think that the Jem'hadar cruiser is designed for bleed through damage in order to damage highly armored structures and highly armored starships, to cause bleed through damage in order to limit their defensive capabilities. Alright, so the Jem'hadar cruiser is a multi-role starship. So the Jem'hadar fighter is designed there for mass production and is a great offensive weapon. Now, the Jem'hadar cruiser is great at offense, it's good at defense, it's a command ship. Its number one goal, or its number one job, is to be a command ship. It is also a troop transport, and it's also the Dominion's main supply ship, and it's also used for planetary bombardment, because obviously the Jem'hadar fighters, they're not going to be very good for planetary bombardment, but these ships are perfectly capable of doing that. They have a lot of transporters, and they can bring a large amount of troops to an enemy structure or an enemy planet, and they could conquer the planet relatively quickly by using just the massive amounts of troops. Now, the thing we want to focus on now is the primary role of this ship. Now, as I said, this ship can engage starships, and it is designed to hit starships that are using armor and wraparound shields. But that's only in the worst case scenario. This ship's primary function is to operate as a mobile command center. Alright, so this ship's primary function is a mobile command center, and the way the fleets operate is every Jem'hadar cruiser has 12 Jem'hadar fighters with it, and each squadron consists of 3. So, with that being said, the command ship will send orders to the Jem'hadar fighters and will command them what ships to attack. It'll tell them when to defend, it'll tell them what ships to choose, what ships to attack, where to focus. And the main reason for this is the Jem'hadar cruisers are going to be sending information about the actual battlefield because they do have very powerful sensors. And they will determine what the Jem'hadar fighters and Jem'hadar support ships like the Cardassian are going to focus on. So, for example, we talked about the bubble shield. So we know that Jem'hadar fighters are especially good at destroying bubble shield starships. So the Jem'hadar could focus on taking out the Galaxy class. They could also focus on taking on one of the long-range torpedo frigates, and then we can send the other fleet to focus on taking on the Akira. So we want to take on these primary targets, and then we're going to engage this fleet. That's what the Jem'hadar boardas on board the Jem'hadar cruisers are going to do. So one of the things is the Jem'hadar cruisers are not meant to actually engage ships on a one-on-one basis. They are always meant to control fleets of ships and tell them what targets to take out and what targets to destroy. Because you gotta remember, the Jem'hadar cruiser, it's a cruiser, it's good for combat, but it's not fantastic. Overall, on a one-on-one basis, I don't think this ship would do or end up very well against a Galaxy class. It doesn't have very powerful fire rates. It does have strong weapons, but because of the low firing rates, these ships are not really designed for front-line combat. They're designed to be behind the lines, send their orders, and tell their smaller attack craft what to do, what to focus on, and who to kill. Remember that. They're a command ship. Their primary function is a command ship. So now we need to talk about the logistics of how many of these ships that they have, because obviously that's important. So the Dominion fleet, for every one cruiser, there were 12 Jem'hadar fighters, and they produced this as their standard. So we know the we know the Dominion fleet consists of 4,154 Dominion bug ships. So that means there were 346 Jem'hadar cruisers. So the Jem'hadar cruiser may not be as powerful as a Galaxy class, but it's in the same ballpark. But there's probably, for every Galaxy class on the battlefield, there are 2 or 3 Jem'hadar cruisers. The Jem'hadar cruiser is a mass-produced, I would say, medium battle cruiser. It is a cruiser, but it operates like a battle cruiser. It's strong, it's fast, it has good firepower. It's not overwhelming like a Galaxy class, but it does have enough firepower to take on most ships on a one-on-one. When it comes to the larger cruisers, it's going to be able to handle most cruisers. When it comes to battleships like the Galaxy, the Nebula, the Warbird, these things are going to struggle. I don't think this could take on a Volca class cruiser on a one-on-one. Most of the other ships that the major powers have, this ship could probably take them on a one-on-one. So once you get past the 12 Jem'hadar fighters, you're then going to have to fight this ship, which is around the power level of a Galaxy class. This ship is probably pretty easy to produce. It's brought down to its bare minimums. It does have, a lot of sensory equipment, so it's not like they can just absolutely mass produce this ship. but it can be reduced at a significant level, which is far greater than any of the other major empires would with their, advanced battle cruisers. All right, so the base estimate is based off the fact that the 1,500 ships that the Klingons have were fighting against the Dominion force, which outnumbered them 3-1. So this is just a guess and then in a slight operational skew of a possible command function level performance for the Jem'hadar fleet. So, like I said, it's based on the interactions against the Klingons being outnumbered 3-1, and then seeing the manuals and other information saying for every Jem'hadar cruiser there are 12 fighters operating in its wing. So that's where this information come from. Based on what I see in the logistics, I see this as a good support ship. It's honestly not as strong as I thought it would be, but I can see that for something that is mass produced, it's a efficient ship, and nonetheless, and I can see how it is very dangerous on the battlefield. But honestly, overall perspective, I find this ship to be probably a mid-level cruiser at best. I can understand that obviously if you are looking at it from a command ship perspective, it's obviously very dangerous. But looking at it on a one-on-one perspective, I find this ship to be lacking a little bit, because if you do start to get past the shields, having only 6 firing arcs is very limited, and once those are down, the ship's defensive capabilities are greatly hindered. For an example, a Galaxy-class starship has 14 Type X phasers, and this ship has only 6. So you can see that it's greatly limited in its attack potential once you get those shields down. But that's just my opinion. I'd be curious what you guys think. Do you think that I gave you a correct perspective on the Dominion cruiser? Do you have any ideas? Do you think I made a mistake with anything? I would like to see your comments. And then happy 4th of July, everybody.